Good morning or good afternoon. It's Ms. Bauer here, and today we're going to continue talking about special segments within triangles. Now, the video from the other day was all about the vocabulary. So taking a look at altitudes, how that's your height, there's always a box there because it's perpendicular, and getting into all of this. Today we're going to talk about how do you solve with these things, and it really boils down to, do you know your vocabulary? So, taking a look at this first problem, it says find BC if AD is an altitude. Now, AD may not look like an altitude, but if you remember, the altitude is going to start at the vertex and it's going to go across and be perpendicular, which means that whether this looks like it or not, your altitude is telling you that this angle right here is 90. So 4x plus 10 would equal 90. Now, if you don't know your vocabulary, then you're not going to remember that an altitude is perpendicular on the opposite side, and a lot of people do part equals part, but an altitude is just 90 degrees. That was it, okay? So once you solve this, subtract 10, you get 4x equals 80. Divide both sides by 4, so x would equal 20. And once you know x, you can find BC. So if I come down here and I just plug it in, 2 times 20 is going to be 40. And over here, 3 times 20 is 60 minus 4 would be 56. So what is the length from B to C? 40 and 56 makes that 96. Now, if it had been a perpendicular bisector, then you could have done part equals part with this, but it wasn't. It was an altitude, and if you know your vocab, altitude just means that it goes across and it's perpendicular to the other side. Okay. Now, for all of these ones down here, these 4 are medians, and the directions kind of got cut off, and that's okay. But these are all medians. And if you remember from your vocab yesterday, median follows, and centroids follow a rule of 3s. So your median goes from the vertex to the midpoint, and your POC was that centroid, and it follows that rule of 3s. So coming back over here, these are all medians, and there's multiple, which means that I have centroids. So taking a look at this first one. Okay, point D would be my centroid. BH is a median, and AG is a median, and I'm just making up numbers, okay? So you don't have to write this part down. But if this is a median, what that means is if this piece is 5, this piece would also be 5. If this is a median and this whole thing is 18, then that means that each piece would be 9 and 9. That's the outside because a median goes to a midpoint. So you could put ticks on here if you wanted to. Now, your centroid follows a rule of 3s. And the easiest way to do this is to draw in 3 pieces. If it follows a rule of 3s, that means that this is in 3 chunks. And you can kind of look at it and see which pieces are what. So this would be 1, and then 2 would fit in there. So I'm going to go ahead and sketch that in. So 1, 2, 3. And once you do that, it's going to make it a lot easier for your brain to figure out, do I have the 1 piece? Do I have the 2 piece? Do I have the 3 piece? What do you have? So this tells us that BH is 4.5.
Please release stateside competitors, drum lines,
and sorry about the noise, y'all.
And cheer. Thank you.
So if B to H is 4.5, that's all 3 parts have to make 4.5. So how would you just find this piece? Well, I could take 4.5 and divide it by 3. So D to H would be 1.5. Now, what if I asked you to find B to D? Well, if all 3 pieces make 4.5, and this one piece is 1.5, then 2 of those together would be 1.5 times 2, so that would be 3. And if you draw this in, like I said, your brain is going to fix a lot of it for you, and it's going to be much more simple. So let's take a look at this one down below. It says that K to G is 41.4. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to highlight my pieces. So it doesn't make sense for that to be 1 and that to be 2. This is your 1 piece, and then this is your 2 piece. The longer one will be the 2, and the shorter one will be the 1. Okay, now I'm just making up numbers again. If this whole thing is 30, then it would be 10 here and 20 there. If this part is 30, then that means that each of these little bricks would be worth 15, which means this piece down here would be worth 15, okay? If I told you that this piece is 7, then that means that this piece right here has to be 14 because there's 2 of them. So once you draw it in, it becomes a lot easier to see what do you have and what do you need. So this says find CG if KG, so KG is the whole thing, is 41.4. Now, if the whole thing is 41.4 and I just want CG, that's 1/3 of it. So you can just do 41.4 divided by 3. So 41.4 divided by 3 is 13.8. And now I'm going to ask you this question. What would be KC? Okay. Hopefully you were able to figure out that if this piece is 13.8, KC would be 2 of those pieces. So 13.8 times 2 would make KC 27.6. Okay, now we're going to look at this with equations, and it's even more important that you're drawing in your 3 pieces. Okay, seeing, do you have this piece? Because if this piece is 2, this piece would be 4, and the whole thing would be 6. But if this piece is 2, that means each brick would be worth 1 and 1. So this piece would be 1 and the whole thing would be worth 3. So let's take a look over here. Hey, it's talking about X, Q, and M. So on this part, I'm going to go ahead and draw in my 3 pieces. So I've got 1, 2, 3. Remember that the one that looks longer is going to be your 2 and the shorter one will be your 1. Okay, now M to Q, that's the whole thing, is 3x minus 3. Okay, X to Q right here, this piece, is going to be 2x minus 6. Okay, this is not going to be part equals part. This is 1 piece and this is 3 pieces. So you have a few options. You could take the 3 piece and figure out what the 1 piece is and then do part equals part. But sometimes this isn't going to divide very well. So your other option is if this piece right here is 2x minus 6, this piece would be 2x minus 6, this piece would be 2x minus 6, and then you would know what the whole thing was, and you could set that equal to 3x minus 3. So if this piece is 2x minus 6,
Teachers, at this time, will you please release
this
any
piece
available classes
would also
to
be
the
2x
main
minus
academic
6.
hallway for the send-off? Thank you.
Sorry, y'all. This piece would be 2x minus 6, this piece would be 2x minus 6, and this piece would be 2x minus 6. So there would be 3 2x minus 6s. Okay, if you have 3 of those pieces, that would be 6x minus 18. So 2x minus 6 and 2x minus 6 and 2x minus 6, the whole thing would be 6x minus 18. I'm going to set that equal to 3x minus 3. Okay, now you could have, if this whole thing is 3x minus 3, a third of that would have been x minus 1, and you could have done part equals part with those pieces. But like I said, sometimes it doesn't divide that well, so it's a little bit easier to make your numbers bigger than to try to go smaller. So I'm going to go ahead and set up my fence. Whenever you have letters on both sides, remember to start on the right and move it to the left by doing the opposite or subtracting. So you end up with 3x minus 18 equals negative 3. When you add the 18, you get 3x equals 15, because 18 minus 3 is 15, which makes x 5. Now, you need to be really careful about reading, because the question doesn't ask you for x. The question asks you to find xq, which means that I need to take 5 and plug it back in over here for xq. So what's 2 times 5 minus 6? Xq would equal 4. Okay, now we're going to check this. If this piece is 4, and then there's that and that. That would be 4 and 4 again. That means that the whole thing should be 12. So if I plug in 5 here, I should get 12. And 3 times 5 is 15. 15 minus 3 is 12, so it works, okay? But it doesn't take long to plug it back in and double check it. Okay, let's try another one. Find JW, okay? If J to W, so this piece right here is 6x plus 2, and J to B is 10x plus 1. Now, if you don't draw in your pieces, it's really easy for your brain to go, okay, those are close enough. Part equals part, but they're not. So I'm going to go ahead and sketch out my 1 piece, 2 piece, 3 piece. Okay. Now, I can't really divide this. Okay, so 10x plus 1, if I could divide it by 3, I could figure out what those parts are, but that's really hard to divide by 3. So let's focus on this piece. This 2 piece plus this 1 piece will equal your total, or 10x plus 1. So the only thing that I'm missing is this piece right here. Okay, if I try to subtract these, I'm going to end up with some negatives because 1 minus 2 is negative 1. But if this is 2 parts and this is 1 part, if this piece, 2 of these make 6x plus 2, if I split that in half, that's going to tell me that this piece over here is 3x plus 1. So if I have this 2 piece, 6x plus 2, to get the 1 block, divide it by 2, and that would be 3x plus 1. And now I know this piece is 3x plus 1, this piece is 6x plus 2, and those should add to give me my whole thing, which is 10x plus 1. So 10x plus 1 equals 9x plus 3. Okay, and that's why it's always important to draw these in and ask yourself, what part do you have? And then from here, I'm going to go ahead and set up my fence. If you subtract 9x, you end up with x plus 1 equals 3, and you get the x equals 2. Okay, but the question didn't ask you for x, the question asked you for JW. So if you go and you plug that back in, 6 times 2 plus 2 means that JW equals 14. Now, back to checking. If this is 14, that means that this piece should be 7, because that's the 1 piece, and the whole thing should be 21. So check it. What's 10 times 2 plus 1? 21. So we're in the clear. Always make sure on medians and centroids that you're remembering that rule of 3s and you're drawing that in. Okay? Now we're going to get to these. And if you notice, this isn't a median anymore. It doesn't start at a vertex. It goes from a midpoint to a midpoint. So if you go back and you check your vocab, remember from a midpoint to a midpoint is a mid-segment, and a mid-segment follows a rule of 2s. So going back and taking a look, mid-segment follows rule of 2s. Okay, now just like the median, the outside part, if this is 10, this piece would be 10. If this piece is 7, this piece would be 7. It's the inside where you have to be careful, because if this is 10, that doesn't mean that this longer piece is going to be 10. That's where your rule of 2s comes into place. If this piece is 10, that means this longer piece will be 20. If this piece is 8, that means this longer piece would be 16. Okay? If this piece is 8 and I was going the other way, that means this piece would be 4. Which leads me into the next part. Is it easier to divide by 2 or multiply by 2? And most of you would probably say it's easier to multiply by 2, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to take the smaller piece and multiply it by 2. So find your mid-segment, which is this piece right here, and multiply it by 2. So that's 4x minus 6, and that's how we equal our outside piece, x plus 9. And then you're going to draw your fence and you're going to solve. Now, where you need to be careful is that it's only the mid-segment that's being multiplied by 2. It's not this piece down here. So it's this piece that you want to take and multiply by 2. Okay? And then from there, subtract x, get your letter on the left. So 3x minus 6 equals 9. Add 6, so 3x equals 15. So x would equal 5. Okay? And we're going to plug it back in and check it. 2 times 5 would be 10 minus 3 is 7. Over here, 5 plus 9 would be 14, so it works. It should always be times 2 to get to that outside part. Okay, taking a look at this next one, I want you to try this one. Ask yourself, what's the piece that you would multiply by 2, and then go ahead and do that. Now, it's not 2x that you're going to multiply by 2, it's the middle piece that you're going to multiply by 2. So what's 7 times 2? 14. And that equals 2x. Or you could say 2x equals 14 for solving. Divide both sides by 2, x would equal 7. Okay, and that's it for mid-segments. Just be careful that you're not confusing medians and mid-segments together. Mid-segment goes from a midpoint to a midpoint and follows a rule of 2s. A median centroid will follow a rule of 3s. And we're going to pick back up in the next video with how to look at these things on a graph. See you in a bit.